Great. So, a very good morning to everybody who is present here in the webinar today. And a very great morning to Mr. Faninder BN for giving me this opportunity to participate in this webinar. And the topic for today's presentation is recent advancements in fingerprint science. And I am Dr. Richa Rohatgi, and I am assistant professor in Amity University, Haryana. I'm so sorry, Paninder sir had to give my brief introduction before I start, but I'm too excited to give this presentation. So without wasting any more of your time, let us begin the presentation. Are you all ready? Great. I'm assuming.
Ma'am, your voice is heard by everyone, but they have muted themselves.
Okay. So fingerprints, I'll briefly take you through the fingerprints step by step. And before going on to the recent advances in fingerprint science, let us first understand what fingerprints are, why are they crucial physical evidences, and what are the different types before we begin the advancements there. So fingerprints are irrefutable physical evidences that are found at the scene of crime. That means that if you find fingerprints at a scene of crime, then they are infallible. That means the court will have to agree that the person was present at the scene of crime, irrespective whether at the time of commissioning of crime or later or prior to that. They are unique, they remain unchanged during the lifetime of an individual, and they are also classifiable evidences. Now, as you understand that there are three fundamental principles of fingerprint science, and the second point actually talks about those three fundamental principles. Now, they may be used to link the suspect to the scene of crime, victim, and evidences. So this is also known as the tetrahedron of the crime scene. And this also helps in proving or disapproving the alibis given by the suspects or the witnesses about their being present at the scene of crime to conclusively acquit the innocents or to convict the criminals. There are the types of fingerprints here. So we have I'm so sorry. So there are three types: physical, visible or the patent prints, the invisible or the latent prints, and the plastic prints. So the first one is the visible print. They are either photographed. They can be formed on blood-stained prints, inked impressions, and paint-smeared prints. The second ones are the invisible prints or the latent prints. These are the most commonly encountered prints. These are at the scene of crime, and these are also called as the chance prints. And the last ones are the plastic prints. These are the 3D impressions on any soft surface, for example, clay, putty, and all. Now, we will be discussing or invisible prints, also called as the hidden prints. These are invisible to the unaided eyes, and these can be detected with the help of physical or chemical methods, which are designed to enhance the print residue. Now, fingerprints are deposited by naturally secreted material, such as sweat, sebum, lipids, and foreign materials that are picked up on the hand. And when we touch any other surface with a bare hands, these prints get adhered on that surface. Now, there are some of the conventional methods of developing the latent fingerprints. The conventional methods of developing latent fingerprints, the first being the physical method. Now, under the physical methods, we have powder methods. Now, powder methods, they can be various types of powders like black powder, white powder, gray powder, silver powder, there are red powders, etc. The composition varies. The black powder is made by lamp black or charcoal and all. Or quartz and different types of variants of powders that are used. The second ones are the magnetic powders or formulations containing the ferric oxides, rosins, and manganese dioxides. Powders came into picture when people started to realize the toxic long-term effects on the health by other inorganic powders which contain the metal oxides of lead, mercury, cadmium, copper, bismuth, etc. So they started using these organic powders. These are mostly based on they are used with distilled water. They are kept and then over a period of a week or 7 days, and then they are pulverized and made use as a fine powder. Then there are luminescent powders, which are either natural and synthetic compounds that fluoresce upon exposure to UV light or alternating light sources. Then there are thermoplastic powders also. These powders, such as used to develop latent fingerprint upon exposure to heat, and the latent fingerprint becomes visible by fusing to the surface. So you have to apply heat onto these powders so as to make them visible. The hot iron or the hot plate, or you can simply put it in the oven for a few minutes and then they will become visible. Then there are also small particle reagent, which is also known as SPR. So these basically affect fine molybdenum diused in conjunction with detergent solution. So basically SPR is a fine powder, but it has no detergent which is added into it, which makes which has two ends to it, a lipophilic and a lipophobic. These are the features of the developed prints using different methods of developing the physical method. So first one is the black powder, second, as you can see, is the fluorescent powder, third is thermal powder, fourth is white powder, and the fifth one is the magnetic powder. Here you can see that the brush is not the normal used brush. This is called as a magnetic wand, and this works like a piston. So the moment you put it in the magnetic powder, the powder gets adhered, as you can see in the second slide of the magnetic powder pictures. And when you again lift the piston, and the entire powder gets completely poured on the fingerprint. Now this is also one of the most advantageous because it uses less powder and there is no wastage of powder as such, and all these powders can be reused. So whatever the excess powder is there, you can always blow it and you can always keep it aside for the reuse. Then comes the some conventional methods of developing latent fingerprints. These are the chemical methods. Now there are so many chemical methods, so I have defined them as part 1, 2, and 3. Now in the first one, we are discussing the iodine fuming method. So here the iodine vapors are absorbed by the fingerprint secretion to give the yellowish brown latent prints, and these are basically the iodine crystals that we can put in our, and because iodine fumes are again hazardous to health, so we need to have a chamber for it, and then whatever substrate that can or that is expected to contain the fingerprint, a latent fingerprint, will be put inside that chamber, and the fumes will get adhered to the fatty acid content of the sweat, and it will give the print. Now these are very temporary, so we need to either photograph them, or we need to alternatively fix them with starch solution. So then next is the cyanoacrylate fuming. I have put cyanoacrylate just after iodine fuming is because of the same procedure that it is used of the iodine fuming. So again, the crystals will be taken in a chamber, and the prints will be exposed to the cyanoacrylate fuming. It is also known as superglue fuming. So superglue or alkyl 2 cyanoacrylate esters to form the whitish print. Now in the iodine fuming, we get the brownish prints. Here we get the whitish prints. So there has to be a contrasting background so as to choose method of developing the latent prints that we want to take. Then we get further enhancement with the dyes such as the rhodium 6G or crystal violet, DMAC, which is dimethyl aminocinnamaldehyde, and diketonic chelates of the europium rare earth metal for the better visualization. Then comes the ninhydrin test or the ninhydrin method. These may be applied by spraying or swabbing or dipping the substrate which contains to have fingerprint into the ninhydrin solution, and post-process treatment by applying heat to accelerate the reaction. So again, we can use all these. You can also see a picture there on the left hand side along the ninhydrin method where hot iron pressing is being done, and the picture below is the developed ninhydrin prints. Then 5-MTN is another derivative of ninhydrin, which is 5-methyl thioninhydrin, and this also develops the purple red colored prints, whereas ninhydrin develops the Ruhmann's because it is after the name of the person who devised this test. Then we have DMR118 as a fluorochemical method. DFO is an anhydrous analog which may be used on porous surfaces and can be viewed under the alternating light sources. And it is mostly used before ninhydrin, because ninhydrin makes the pale in color. So we use this first and then ninhydrin. It is also considered to be a little more sensitive in comparison to ninhydrin. Then next we have 1,2-indane. 1,2-indane is an extremely sensitive amino acid reagent. By the way, ninhydrin, 5-MeO, and DFO, and indane all these react with the amino acid contents present in the sweat. Is an extremely sensitive amino acid reagent which develops the latent fingerprints. Similar to DFO, developments may further be enhanced with the zinc chloride treatment. So as the iodine fuming we use iodine to fix them, here we can use the zinc chloride. These are some of the pictures of developed prints using these techniques. So first one is the cyanoacrylate super black background. The second one is the 1,2-indane dione. Third is DFO, and fourth picture has two sets of ninhydrin. The how it then the developed prints, and then the fifth one is the iodine fuming. Sixth is the 5-MeO. Then the chemical methods for developing latent fingerprints part 2 continues with silver nitrate, which reacts with the sodium chloride content present in the sweat, and this and this is not a suitable method in humid conditions, because obviously this does not require any heating to be done. The reaction mechanism completes only in the presence of the photon, so it has to be it has to be dried in the sunlight only for the action to be completed. So next is amido black. Now amido black is mostly used on blood stained prints, gives a black impression on both porous and non-porous. Similarly, Sudan black develops dark blue prints on greasy or waxy non-porous surfaces such as glass, metal, milk cartons, in of glass. Then we have another one. These are mostly often you would see these techniques being used in the crime scene more so. But these are theoretically there, and these were traditionally used. But because of some of the other disadvantages these are now being not being used that predominantly. Then is the osmium tetroxide, which again physical developer. This is generally applied after DFO and anhydrine methods, and it is best suited for developing prints on paper bags, paper currency. Sodium chloride solution is sometimes used in conjunction with the physical developer to darken the stain and to lighten the background. So it gives a contrast there. Then last is the VMD. VMD is the semi-porous and non-porous surfaces where the gold particles are evaporated on the exhibit and adhered on the furrows. So it does not adhere to the print. It gets repelled by the fatty acid zinc particles are evaporated and the gold particles, and the result is a fingerprint preserved with photography usually. So these are the pictures of a few of these techniques. So first one is the osmium tetroxide, the second one is the silver nitrate, third is through VM, fourth is Sudan black, and fifth is amido black, the blood stain, and sixth is the SPR. So these are the two SPR variants. One is with basic fission, the pink one, and the right crystal violet dye. Now we come to the of the reactant from one phase to another, and it has a hydrophilic phase and a hydrophobic phase and an intermediate phase. So usually it used in conjunction with the dye, and on the non-sticky side of tapes is what it is mostly used on. Then there are densyl chloride used to enhance the blood stain prints again and gives black impressions on both porous and non-porous, just like the amido black. Then the liquid drox is generally applied after DFO and ninhydrin. So as you know that because it is on the same function, it also reacts with the amino acid content present in the sweat, and it is best suited for developing prints on paper bags, paper currency. Sodium hypochlorite solution. Then next is oil development. and Nilred. These are the luminescent benzophenoxene dyes that have been used as a post cyanoactive stain for the luminescence enhancements. And last is Flared. This is an important one, and it is a mixture of osmic acid, chromic acid, and glacial acetic acid to develop the latent fingerprints. The vapors of Fleming's reagents penetrate the fatty present in the sweat, and the metallic salts are reduced to the metals. The substrate is then soaked, diazine, fast yellow dye. Okay, this entire thing for the Fleming's reagent to react takes about 6 hours, so it is mostly done overnight. And this gives fluorescence under the UV light. The background appears bright yellow, while the prints developed are the black in color. Then we have some other non-conventional powders. So these were the previously used techniques, which were chemical methods. Now most of the time it is seen that the conventional powders are toxic and pose health hazards. So to overcome this disadvantage, many researchers have done work on household kitchen powders such as turmeric powder, cocoa powder, custard powder, baking soda, henna powder, flowers and leaves extracts, vermilion, wax, soil, etc. These are few examples of the pictures of the fingerprints developed using some of those non-conventional, other than the chemicals. Then there are some methods, some modern methods to develop the latent fingerprints. These are the optical methods. So we have studied the physical methods, the chemical methods, and now we're talking about the optical methods. So under optical methods, we have creating the crime scene prints at odd surfaces with fluorescent powders. The background gets eliminated with laser examination. Very old prints can be developed using this technique, and also the chance prints, which otherwise are difficult to develop, can be visualized using the laser technique. The next one is the Polylite. It is a portable device to carry at the scene of crime. So in situ examination can be done using the Polylite, and it makes the fingerprints become visible wherever they're present. And they also work on the fluorescent variants of the powders, and under the Polylite they also fluoresce and give the proper rich details. Similarly, Polyray, it is also the latest equipment being used for the latent fingerprint detection. It is both battery as well as electricity operated with pistol grip, and it is lightweight and it is very handy to use. The next one is the OptiPrint 1000. OmniPrint 1000. OmniPrint light kit is a portable high intensity source of light. The laser has different intensities of wavelengths, and this works well with again the fluorescent powders. The dust lighting kit is the next one. It is specially designed and proved to be a boon for lifting chance prints from dusty surfaces. So it also acts like an electrostatic dust lifter. The dust particles are charged with electromagnetic or polyvinyl sheet, and that can be used for further treatment or directly photographed for the comparison purposes. The last one here is AFIS, Automated Fingerprints Identification System, for the biometric identification. Now, the principle around background free latent fingerprint imaging is the difference in optical properties between the contrast agents and the background compounds. So the different excitation wavelengths, the different emission wavelengths, different luminescence lifetimes of all these powders that we are using. And when we have different filters used with these light sources, then we can have an enhanced view of the latent fingerprint. So the different plasmonic properties and different photothermal properties, different electrochemiluminescence properties. So these are the basis for the optical development of the latent fingerprints. These are few pictures of these optical instruments. First one is Polylite, then is laser, then is Polyray, electrostatic lifter or the dust lifting kit, and then the ALS, alternating light sources. Now, AFIS, or the Automated Fingerprints Identification System. Now, fingerprint technology has come a long way since its inception more than 100 years ago. The first primitive live scan fingerprint reader was introduced in 1988, but with many problems as compared to the sleek and inexpensive and relatively minuscule sensors which are available today. During the past few decades, the research and active use of fingerprint matching and indexing have also advanced and given rise to widespread use of AFIS. However, a number of challenges still remain to overcome, especially when the fingerprint images are of poor quality. So in India, UIDAI which is a unique identification authority of India, to issue Aadhaar cards to all the residents of India to eliminate duplicacy and fake identities, verifiable and authenticable database for personal identification. So for these two reasons, it was made mandatory for every individual, every citizen of India to have Aadhaar card, and it requires fingerprints, an iris scan, and a photograph when we talk about the biometric personal identification parameters. Now for the AFIS, we have, this is a flowchart that defines how this functions. So first, the fingerprint acquisition. So you have a sensor, a flatbed sensor, where you put your fingerprints there, and that is where the fingerprint acquisition takes place. Then the quality estimation is there. So if the fingerprints allow, many government offices and private institutes also now have the fingerprint reader for attendance, biometric attendance marking. So when we put the thumb impression on the sensor there, sometimes it says that there's an error message shown. So that is the quality estimation. That means because the computer understands the 0 1 binary form only, so it has to have in a particular, you cannot put your thumb impression obliquely or at an angle, how it was recorded initially for the database. So then comes the fingerprint enhancement. So whatever little buffering and the fine tuning of the ridges to be done, that will be done. So fingerprint indexing and the feature extraction. Then comes the feature editing, and then comes the fingerprint matching or the comparison, and finally the match verification. Now sometimes it so happens that it may not be completely 100% true, so it will give you a similar matches. It could be two similar matches to the print that was initially acquired, and then manually or with the help of a skilled professional, you can finally come down to the exact print matching. Then this is another picture, a pictorial representation of the same. So it is a flowchart of the minutiae extraction algorithm. So this is, I have put the references also, and this is the input image. This is how the orientation field takes place. So it will realign the fingerprint or the thumb impression so as to find the core and the delta. And with respect to the core and the delta, it will look for the minutiae or the ridge characteristics like bifurcation and ridge endings, etc. Then comes the extracted ridges. So these are the, if you can see clearly there, it is seen that the extracted ridges or the ridge minutiae can be seen here. And then these are thinned. Why it is thinned is because the fingerprints have the edges also. Sometimes the ridges are coarse, and sometimes it is finer. So the ridge details may become superimposed or may become altered that way. So it thins the lines, and only the ridges wherever it will show that image. And finally the minutiae or the extracted ridges. So this is an overview of the recent advances. So the recent progress on fingerprint visualization and analysis has been done by imaging ridge residue and utilization of such nanoparticles and nanopores in finger mark detection using sensors and different light sources. So this is, so until now we studied all the conventional, traditionally used techniques, methods employed to develop the latent fingerprints and to visualize them, to enhance the visualization of the developed prints. And now we discuss the actual topic in hand, which is the recent advances. So in that, the first one is imaging of the ridge residue and utilization of such nanoparticles and nanopores and finger mark detection using sensors and different light sources. The second is by extracting presence of human metabolites and substrates with incendiary materials, explosives, or illicit drugs. So what it says is that when we touch any surface, the sweat, the fingerprint gets transferred on that surface, and not just the fingerprint for personal identification, identification, we can also use that fingerprint or the sweat component of that fingerprint to extract the different information with respect to the human metabolites, or whether somebody has touched any incendiary material, explosives, or if the person is a habitual drug abuser. So all these things can also be considered using the fingerprint extraction. Then fingerprint residue with an emphasis on the utilization of MS, that is mass spectroscopy, IR spectroscopy, infrared, Raman, and micro as of rapid and non-destructive imaging of finger marks by providing spectral information on chemical compositions. So the prints that have been wiped off or washed off, they can also be developed from the metal objects. So in a recent study, researchers have found that the chemical deposits that form fingerprints have electrical insulating characteristics, which can block the electric even if the fingerprint material is very thin. So only few nanometers thick also, it will be able to block the current. So by using this electric currents to a colored active film which shows up in the bare regions or the furrows between the fingerprint deposits, researchers can create a negative of the print in what is known as an electrochromic image. And according to this team of the forensic scientists, this method is so sensitive that it can even detect the fingerprints from the metal objects, even if they have been wiped off or even washed off. Next recent technique is that the color changing of the fluorescent films. So a fluorescent film enhanced by adding fluorophores molecules, which are electrochromic and give fluorescence in UV light, provided a third color that can be adjusted to develop a high contrast fingerprint image. This gave scientists an extra tool in developing contrasting colors of the latent fingerprints. The next recent technique is the micro X-ray fluorescence, or it is also called as the MXRF. MXRF detects the sodium, potassium, and chlorine elements present in the salts, as well as many other elements if they are present in the fingerprints. The elements are detected as a function of and making it possible to see a fingerprint where there are salts they have been deposited on any surfaces. So basically MXRF detects the sodium, potassium, and chloride ions on the surface of the fingerprint. So it is irrespective whether this is through the fingerprints or through the sweat, wherever these things will be present, it will enhance those, and if they are in the form of a fingerprint, they will be enhanced in the form of details. So that is how that can be examined. Then there is one non-invasive procedure. This is the next advancement in the fingerprints. This technique has several advantages over conventional fingerprint detection methods that involve treating the suspected area with powders or liquids or vapors. So we have seen that there are so many types of physical powders. There are different chemical methods also, where in some cases we use the vapors, and in some cases we use the liquid itself to either spray or dip the substrate into to develop the latent fingerprints. So this technique also has several advantages over these conventionally used techniques. So in order to add color to the fingerprint, it can be easily seen and photographed. The non-invasive procedure basically deals with the DNA content of a person. So that will be extracted through the sweat that's deposited on the fingerprints. The second point says that since using traditional fingerprint contrast enhancement, it is sometimes difficult to detect the fingerprints present on certain substances such as multicolored backgrounds. So when we have the multicolored backgrounds, the most obvious way of developing fingerprint is using the fluorescent powders, the anthracene powder or any other fluorescent powder on a multicolored surface, and then enhancing or visualizing those prints using ALS or alternating light source or under the UV light, so that the background becomes dull, and only the print where the fluorescent powder has been adhered to will fluoresce and will become more pronounced, and we can take a photograph of it. So this technique can be used on these things where they are odd surface like multicolored backgrounds or fibrous papers or textiles, wood, leather, plastic, adhesive sides of the tapes, and even on the human skin. So most immunologists require blood samples. Now to take blood sample, this is an invasive method, and you also require the ethical clearance, and you also require the volunteer to the suspect or the persons to volunteer themselves. But in this non-invasive procedure, it eliminates that problem, and simply the fingerprints can be taken, and or they can be extracted from the surface, and they can be further used for the DNA examination. Then comes this uh, this is the TOF SIMS, or this is the time of flight mass spectroscopy, mass spectrometry study. This has recently been gradually become one of the most sensitive analytical techniques in the surface science. A mass spectrometry based image is then produced by casting the ion beam across the sample surface. Depending on the ion dose, the technique can be very surface sensitive to 1 to 2 layers and with a finely lateral resolution or the order of a few tens of nanometers. It has also been introduced in the forensic field to link the time of flight simulated spectroscopy finger marks to evidence found at the scene of crime, such as reliable age prediction of the latent fingerprint. That means we can probably give the estimation of the age of the fingerprint, not of the donor. Then this technique can also be very effective tool in the chemical investigation of the finger marks, and can also help ascertain both the identification of a drug and its distribution over the finger mark. Also, the finger mark images obtained with the time of flight studies illustrates its capability of visualizing a general arrangement of dermal ridges, terminals, and sweat pores. So, poroscopy, regioscopy, agioscopy, and fingerprint science all can be studied through this. Next, we have the and this immunology studies of the nanoparticles functionalized with antibodies. The antibodies are highly specific to individual antigens. So antibodies are specific to antigens. They have a lock and key mechanism, as you all know, and due to the unique 3D structures developed at the antigen binding site, the antibodies specific to that antigen gets adhered to it, and the other antigen antibodies will not react with that antigen. So the detection of a drug present in the antibody can react with that drug. But this is not enough to prove the use of that drug, because it can also be excluded that the drug may be deposited or falsely planted later on the finger mark. So what it is saying is that this technique can be used as an antibody antigen binding relationship. So if we consider drug as the antigen, and we use the technique to only look for that particular drug in the finger mark, and we find that drug, so we can say that the person or the donor might have come in contact that drug. That means he must have administered that drug. But it is also saying that it may not be true always, because that can also be falsely planted on the finger mark. So an effective solution to this problem is to use gold nanoparticles functionalized with antibodies. The gold nanoparticles functionalized with an antibody specific to nicotine. This is an example taken. And is that of a smoker or a non-smoker. So this is a specific nicotine specific antibody made with gold nanoparticles, and it will only bind if the fingerprint is by a smoker. And if it is by a non-smoker, there will be no antigen present, and it will not adhere to the fingerprint. So a simple preparation of antibody functionalized gold nanoparticles through the use of the antibody magnetic particle conjugates, various drugs and drug metabolites, such as the tetrahydrocannabinol, delta 9, and methadone or narcotine. These can be easily detected in the latent fingerprints. Then comes the aptometer based methods. Okay, I actually am sorry, dear audience, that I had to rush through my slides, the initial slides on the physical methods and the chemical methods, part 1, 2, 3, and the optical method, because I presume that we all have that basic know-how of those techniques, and these were the recent techniques. So this is where I'm putting more effort, and I have with a slow pace I'm going on. But in case you have any doubts or queries with regards to any of the previous slides also, you can always ask those questions and we can discuss later on after the PPT. So aptometer based methods, the aptometers are the oligonucleotides or peptide molecules that bind to a specific target molecule. The affinity and specificity shown by the aptometer target binding complexes have been found to be higher than those of the antibody antigen complexes. So this is a way better than the previously discussed technique. Now, the use of this technique for the detection and visualization of the latent finger marks by using the lysozyme specific aptometer based reagents. And in the presence of lysozymes, the aptometers fold into their specific three-dimensional structures, thus allowing them to bind to the lysozymes present in the latent finger marks. So we have to make a complex aptometer target binding complex, that say supposing we are expecting our fingerprint to have a particular drug. So whatever the active principle present in that drug, we will make that specific aptometer, and that will bind with the lysozymes present in the latent fingerprint if that drug was present in that. This is a picture showing the charged latent finger mark on a substrate that is developed using the aptamer based reagent, and this was aged for 24 hours before it was developed with the lysozyme aptometer. So this is a zoomed picture on the right of the picture that you can see on the left, which also fluoresces. So this contains the fluorescent tag, that is why it is giving that fluorescence. Then comes this nanoparticles for to visualize the latent fingerprints. Now here this is done by using the localized surface plasma on resonance, or LSPR. LSPR is the localized surface plasma on resonance property of aptometer bound gold particles. It was found that the presence of cocaine in latent fingerprint, this is an example taken. So it was found that presence of cocaine in latent fingerprint could induce the aggregation of gold nanoparticles, which resulted in true color changes in dark field microscopy, thus providing colorful images of the latent finger marks. Are much more intense signals. They enable higher resolution imaging. Then expanded this idea of nanoplasmonic imaging to identify 135, that is RDX, 135 trinitro, 135 triazine explosive residues in the latent fingerprints. So as you can see that it is not only limited to the detection of the drugs or any metabolites or any special immunological extraction and all. It can also vary to the explosive residues, or in cases of arsons, and in cases of self immolation and explosives residues and incendiary residues also, this technique can be used. Now this is the summary. Now the obvious question here is, where do we go from here? So the answer lies in that the recent advances that we have already discussed to share, which are anti-Stokes powders or powder solutions. Then there are modified fuming methods also. So we have a couple of fuming methods which we already use, but other than those, we can have many more fuming methods, and most of the fuming methods that we use are hazardous to health, but we can have variants to it which can modify those those disadvantages and limitations, and can be more widespreadly used. Then nanoparticles and nanofluorescent suspensions. So nanophores can also be used for the detection of latent fingerprints, and in coming time quantum dots as fluorescence labeling markers for the latent fingerprint visualization may also become the core area for the researchers. The next is the non-stoichiometric reagents, which development of contaminated fingerprints. So not necessarily that we encounter the groomed proper fingerprints, but we can also encounter a contaminated partial print or smudged prints. So these may help in identifying those types of prints as well. Then there is chemical imaging for specific compounds, that is for the drugs and the explosive residues. We have already seen few such examples of chemical imaging, but there can be many more depending upon the specific drugs, antigen antibody reactions and all. And we have bacteria profiles also. So for the possibility of any disease or illnesses, we can take this profiling also from the sweat content that is there on the fingerprint residue. In the end, I just want to say that forensic researchers are continually aiming to develop the novel methods for obtaining personal identification through fingerprints. Accurate fingerprint identification is of great importance in providing information about a fingerprint donor's age, race, sex, blood group, dietary habits, drug abuse, or his medical history. So the techniques and the methods that are used or that may be used or that are being explored in the fingerprint field, but we need to understand that these may not always be very handy and optimal for the crime scene fingerprint examination. So for the crime fingerprint examination, we require techniques which can be used to document at the scene of crime itself instead of collection, preservation, sending it to the laboratory, then analyzing, then comparison. So it is always better that we at the scene of crime itself we develop those prints. So for those, still today we are using the conventional techniques or the normal chemical and physical methods of developing fingerprints. But in this conclusion, I am more focusing on the research aspect, that on the basis of the documents that can be made, like Aadhaar card. So you can say that okay, if the two fingerprints match, that means they are made by the same finger of the same person, and no two fingers in this world can have an exactly same set of rich details. So this is for the personal identification. But until now, fingerprint was used for this purpose only. But with this, we also understand that there are so many other researches also going on in the fingerprint science, and that researchers are continually working on different areas and aspects. For example, so much so to provide information with regards to the donor's age, donor's sex, race, blood group, dietary habits, drug abuse, or medical histories, etc. Now, many anthropometric analysis and database studies have also been carried out. So, they, apart from just the fingerprint as a forensic stream in the forensic science, we also have some anthropometric studies done on this, and some database studies on the on using the ridge density analysis or the hand dimensions or the digit ratios of the palm of the hand, and some of the population studies also thereof, which means that if you encounter a fingerprint from a scene of crime and you develop it, and then you want to match it with the suspect list, and say supposing in your case you don't have any suspect list, so you just have a questioned fingerprint. So what all information can you derive from that questioned fingerprint is what all listed here. So you can probably derive, if you calculate the ridge density and the hand dimensions and the digit ratios and all these things, you can also come to a probable conclusion that it may belong to a particular population group. Or say supposing if the ridge density is between is lesser than 12 ridges per millimeter square area in the fingerprint, then you can say it probably belongs to a male. And if it is higher than 12 or 14, then you can say it probably belongs to a female. Now there are researchers to support this statement that you are saying, but again, because it is a database study, these are all statistical studies, so there is no foolproof or 100% conclusivity in this. There is only a probable narrowing down of your suspect list through these. Then some researchers have also studied fingerprints relation with respect to the criminal behavior, delinquency, and psychological theory of crime. So as you can see that not just limited to anthropology and chemical physical sciences or nanotechnology sciences, we also have psychologists or criminal profilers also making use of the fingerprint science to ascertain the criminal behavior and the delinquencies in the in the individuals. Now in future there have been some studies also where researchers team of researchers have taken fingerprints from prisoners and from the delinquent or the rehabilitation homes for the delinquents, and they have compared those fingerprints with normal, as in people who have no police background or any criminal record or criminal past history. So they have also given some information regarding whether it is statistically uh, significant to say that the fingerprints can be used for the studies of criminal behaviors and delinquencies. Then in future, methods that are reliable, portable, fast, low cost, sensitive, selective, and non-destructive are highly needed for visualizing the latent finger marks physically and for imaging them chemically. So in future, these are the trends that have to be taken up, keeping in mind their importance with respect to their reliability. They should be portable. That means they can be into the crime scene through crime scene mobile vans, or they can be taken by the private forensic experts, fingerprint experts at the scene of crime, or they can be taken by the there should be some techniques which may be used. Like we need to understand that the police professionals who actually have to develop the fingerprints at the scene of crimes, it is not mostly the researchers that go at the scene of crime. It is the police personnels and the IOs who have to deal with this. So they are rather not properly either get the opportunity to be trained in the lifting and developing the fingerprints. So for them there is always this bigger challenge as to what type of fingerprints should be collected with what type of technique. For example, if I have a glass surface, what is the best method that I should use to develop the prints present on that? Or if I have a mobile screen, then what method should I use from that? Or if I have a resin bag, then what method should I use for developing latent fingerprints on that? So there has to be a streamlining in that sense, that the different techniques can be made uh, available to the police personnel of our country who are doing work day and night with tirelessly and with so much of enthusiasm and vigor. So at the same time, there is also a need for certain techniques which can be used on multiple surfaces. So even if a surface which has been drowned in water, so mostly why I'm saying drowned in water is because mostly the assailants, after the perpetration of crime, once they leave, they also want to leave the space without their evidences being lying around. So if they see that, oh, I have left my fingerprint at the scene of crime, what best way is there for me to hide it, wipe it, or just erase it from the scene of crime? So either they manually erase it, like they just wipe it off with the frictional and mechanical force, or they they drown the evidence, say supposing the weapon of offense, the pistol, the gun, or maybe the knife with which they have committed the crime, they'll just throw it in the water body, so that it just goes on with the stream of water from one place to another, and maybe not get found also, or they either put the entire crime scene on fire, so that they think that the crime scene itself is now completely in ashes. How is any forensic expert going to find the fingerprints also? So everything is already gone. So there are techniques which are already there, where single technique may be used on such difficult surfaces. There are also cases of difficult surfaces like where the prints are on plastic. There are also surfaces like the CD discs. There are surfaces like skin. So all these surfaces are very odd surfaces, and we need to, as the researcher community, we need to work upon finding suitable techniques to enhance prints from these. I have also published a couple of papers on in few years back in on those lines, and there are so many researchers worldwide. This is only to help the police officials and the IOs who are working at the crime scene to find one single technique to detect the fingerprints. But this presentation is mostly research based. That means it is talking about the laboratory aspect. What recent developments and advances that we have seen in the laboratory, per se, nanopores, nanoparticles, and the conjugation of haptometer, and so many more. So now with this I conclude my PPT, and in acknowledgement I need to give my wholehearted heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Faninder BN, forensic expert and founder Clue for Evidence, for giving me this opportunity to participate and deliver this talk and interact with the wide range of audience through this never before podium of e-learning and the webinar series. Kudos to you, sir. Congratulations. And I would also like to extend my big thanks to all my students of my past and my present students for being an integral part of my research and educational journey. And I wish them best in their academic careers. You all are the best, my students. And let me also take this opportunity to bow down in gratitude to all my teachers, gurus, and seniors for their constant support and guidance always. These were the references I used, and thank you all.